Ole Miss just hit a grand slam with their latest offensive coordinator hire.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast in America network. Today's show, we're going to be talking about how Ole Miss hiring John David Baker as the 2026 offensive coordinator under Pete Golding. That move is an absolute home run for the program. We'll dive into why this is such a strong hire and what it means for the Ole Miss Rebels moving forward. Next, we're going to break down how Baker played a pivotal role in Ole Miss's rise by helping to bring Jackson Dart to Oxford and by influencing the game plan that led to the 2023 Peach Bowl win over Penn State and their top-rated defense. His fingerprints have been all over this program for longer than many realize. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So Ole Miss hired John David Baker as offensive coordinator. Well, the paperwork might not be completely done, but it's been reported by Zenitz and NACOS and all of the usual suspects. So Ole Miss is hiring John David Baker to be their 2026 offensive coordinator. What does that mean for Charlie Weis Jr.? It means nothing. Charlie Weis Jr. will be here for the playoffs as was originally agreed upon. John David Baker will take over as soon as Ole Miss is eliminated and start building towards the 2026 season. What this brings is lack of a change to the offense. If you are familiar and comfortable with this offense right now, you will be comfortable and familiar with the offense in 2026. The players that were recruited to run this offense and do it effectively can run that offense very effectively. And you have an offensive coordinator that is very highly thought of and very highly regarded. He picked Ole Miss over Virginia Tech and James Franklin and over South Carolina and Shane Beamer. Kendall Briles ended up going to South Carolina. That's actually a perfect fit for Lenora Sellers, by the way. And Penn State, offensive line or tight ends coach or something like that is going to be the offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, which basically means it's probably going to be James Franklin because he's an offensive guy. But John David Baker to Ole Miss checks every single box from what Pete Golding said in his press availability Sunday. He talked about not wanting to change the systems that are in place. Continuity is the most important thing in regards to building a program. This is somebody that was at Alabama and saw how they did it. Whenever a new offensive coordinator got brought in, it wasn't what offense does the new offensive coordinator run. It was how do you adapt to this offense and this terminology. He wanted continuity. He wanted to avoid change. Nick Saban at Alabama, and he was able to do that. Pete Golding saw this firsthand. He was probably told this firsthand whenever he replaced Jeremy Pruitt. And Jeremy Pruitt was probably told it when he replaced Kirby Smart. John David Baker is going to come in to the Ole Miss offense that he's already familiar with. He was here 2021, 2022, and 2023 under the Matt Corral year that went to the Sugar Bowl all the way until the Jackson Dart year that went to the Peach Bowl. Then he went to East Carolina and immediately took that offense from like 17 points a game up to like 32, like in the first year. And then if you look at this season being the money season, these are his national ranks. This is from, I think, Zach Berry from On3, Ole Miss Spirit. John David Baker was number 9 in the country in first downs. He's number 12 in third down conversions, which that's a big deal. If you're third down conversions, that means you probably are pretty good at throwing the football. Number 14 at total offense. Number 15 at passing offense. Number 25 at scoring offense. Number 41 at rushing offense. And number 42 at passing efficiency. What you have potentially is a team that struggled at East Carolina in the red zone because they weren't overly proficient running the football, and the quarterback would occasionally throw the ball to the other team. That's the reason they're probably at number 42. But John David Baker took over an offense and built them up to one of the nation's better offenses in the entire country, led them to wins over Memphis. That was a big win for East Carolina, defeating Memphis, who was at one point, if you remember, a national playoff contender that ended up going to Tulane. Against Tulane, he scared the heck out of those guys. They were down like 12-0 at halftime. He ended up storming back and taking the lead, and that ended up being a back-and-forth game. This East Carolina team, they were pretty good. They weren't great. Their defense had serious flaws, and that is something that will be taken care of at Ole Miss because you're not going to have those flaws at Ole Miss. And we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the program. He basically gets the month of December to play in the transfer portal to find hidden gems that would fit his offense perfectly, along with the work that is going on with Walker Jones and Matt McLaughlin. Kelvin Bolden is in the building again. Him and Dante Moncrief, they're going to run Mississippi. And if Ole Miss can land Derek Nix at a wide receiver position, they have the three best recruiters potentially in the state of Mississippi. So what I'm telling you right now is everything is coming up Millhouse for Ole Miss. Everything is just gravy. Everything is great, especially when you consider where Ole Miss was 9 days ago. And the work that had to be done by Keith Carter, by Pete Golding, by this offensive staff, because they did have to convince Lane Kiffin to let them come back and how it would be good for them to do so and good for him to do it as well. I am really interested to see exactly how practices go. I'm going to hear from my sources about what went on and how practice looked and all of that stuff here in a few minutes to hours. But this football team has a chance to be special. Like cover of books and media guides and the history of Ole Miss, special. They're 4 games away. If they win those 4 games, it's going to be against Tulane. We know that one. If you win, it's going to be against Georgia. We know that one. That's 2 game plans that have been completely built, that all you have to do is tweak. You know stuff that you like against that defense to work. Now you see how the rest of the season, how they adapted over the course of it, and add that to the game plan to take advantage of that. Then, theoretically, you're going to have Ohio State, who is going to it'll either be Ohio State, Miami, and Texas A&M in that other pod. Get past that one, it's the national title game. It's Indiana, Texas A&M, or Texas Tech, Alabama, Oklahoma. They're on that side as well. Ole Miss is exactly in the position that they want to be in. And that's a pretty cool feeling. If you've been an Ole Miss fan as long as I've been an Ole Miss fan, or if you've been an Ole Miss fan longer than I've been an Ole Miss fan, it's a cool feeling to be in the position that Ole Miss is in. When you're going to play a home playoff game, you're favored by 17 points. There's a lot, sure, that could go wrong. And Pete Golding, we have to wait until the lights come on to see if he performs as a head coach. But is there any data out there that makes you think that he's going to shrivel up under these lights? No, not at all. He was the defensive coordinator in the national championship game against Ohio State. He's not going to shrivel up. He's going to bow up. And what you see is the 4D level of chess that he is actually playing right now in building this roster to take Ole Miss to the next level, because Ole Miss is at a point to where it's just about not wrecking the Ferrari. It isn't you did this because of one person. Ole Miss has one of the better rosters in the entire country. Did they play poorly against Georgia? Yeah, but that happens. If you beat Tulane, you're going to get another shot at a neutral site that is going to be 40,000 people in the Superdome wearing red and blue. It's going to feel like an Ole Miss home game if the Sugar Bowl is on the table. This team can make a run, and it's all because of this. And hiring John David Baker to work behind the scenes to get ready for 2026, unbelievably big for Ole Miss. And we'll see exactly how that goes. You know, John David Baker, he's actually largely responsible for the rise of Ole Miss itself. Yeah, I said it. He recruited Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg. And now he gets to be at Ole Miss to take the next step. It's not a corner to go around. It's about relevancy and staying power. We'll talk about that coming up next. Listen, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover or a fourth down stop. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads on money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as your guy heats up. And you can bet on the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every single snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast. Now, so can you. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it keeps all of this free. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every single day. Now it is up to you to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today to get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All of that for just $5 per month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonolemess.supercast.com or check out the link down in the show notes to learn more. All right, so one thing that is pretty interesting of what's going on is John David Baker. He deserves a good bit of credit, actually, for the rise of Ole Miss football. And this is what I mean by that. John David Baker was here 2021, 2022, and 2023 as the passing game coordinator and tight ends coach at Ole Miss. I think he coached those dudes and what's going on. But John David Baker recruited Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg from USC. This is back before the Portal King was really a thing. That was actually the first year where you started to get excited about that. And I remember during the recruitment to where they were talking about, it's like, hey, if John David Baker lands this, he's going to get financially rewarded through a title or whatever else is going on. He'll have everything in his favor, all of that, if they land Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg. Well, they did end up landing Jackson Dart and Michael Trigg. And eventually they got players like Princely Amamiellan and Walter Nolan and Trey Harris and Kewan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss, Trey Wallace, Deuce Alexander, those guys, they're really good players, Sage Ryan. And it was because of what was started when Ole Miss went all in and landed Jackson Dart and to a lesser extent, Michael Trigg. In that, the Portal King, and no shade to him whatsoever, he's the CEO. He can't just do all the recruiting on absolutely everybody. He swooped in, took a picture with him at the end of the day in front of a Bentley, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. And Jackson Dart ended up coming to Ole Miss, and the rest is kind of history. The rise of what would become Ole Miss football kind of started with that recruiting. And John David Baker deserves the credit for that. So in a lot of ways, John David Baker deserves the credit for where Ole Miss is right now. And John David Baker is going to be on campus and get to see Ole Miss play in a playoff game against a team that he went up against this season against East Carolina. But if Ole Miss wins that game, you get a chance to go to the Sugar Bowl and have a second playoff game, a round of 8 game, a quarterfinal game against the Georgia Bulldogs. John David Baker knows exactly what it takes at Ole Miss. He understands the assignment, so to speak, if you want to talk like the kids talked about 10 years ago. I don't even think they say that now, but what they talked about 10 years ago. John David Baker is going to understand the assignment at Ole Miss. He knows how to make an offense click. And the cool thing that's going on, John David Baker here, 21, 22, and 23, 3 different offenses. One singular principle as far as tempo and structure, but 3 completely different offenses. I think it's important to know the differences of what's going on. In 2022, it was a run-heavy, 70% run, where Quinshon Judkins and Zach Evans were just kind of road grading over. 2023, it was the Jackson Dart show. They threw the ball. Trey Harris, those guys made their bones all the way through into a Peach Bowl, won that game, and eventually went 11-2. And last season was the chunk play offense, essentially. You didn't have a running game. It looked different. It's one of the success that John David Baker has is the offense from 2023 to 2024 looked noticeably worse. For whatever reason, I don't even care. I know that Ole Miss started a 5th string wide receiver at running back against the Florida Gators. I understand that. But the offense looked noticeably worse from 2024 to 2023. And the common denominator there is John David Baker went off to East Carolina to start his offensive coordinator journey. And he's done a heck of a job, an absolutely amazing job. And the question becomes, is he going to bring any players back to Ole Miss? Is he going to bring coaches with him to Ole Miss? And I don't know. As far as coaches coming from East Carolina, I don't know. Players-wise, Javante Connor, who was signed by Ole Miss, is at East Carolina, had a pretty good year, made a comment on X that he noticed what was going on. It would not surprise me if Connor's a guy that makes his way back. He has a familiarity with what's going on, and the tight end room is going to be slightly different. But as far as coaches go, I'm not sure about that. If you can get Derek Nix at wide receivers coach, that feels like a no-brainer home run. The tight ends coach is a little bit of a weird thing, I guess. The running backs coach, a little bit of a weird thing. I do not expect Kevin Smith to hang around once it's all said and done, by the way. But John David Baker building up this offensive staff. They have a track record of success. They do a lot of cool, innovative things, and they can throw the ball really well. If you can do that, Ole Miss is going to be just fine with Trinidad Chambliss or Austin Simmons or whoever hangs around at quarterback. It's going to be ripe for the picking for those guys. And this offense eventually is going to be fine and not miss a beat. It can be argued that Ole Miss upgraded the offensive coordinator position with this transition. No shade against Charlie Weis Jr. What I'm going off of, Charlie Weis Jr. away from Lane Kiffin at South Florida had offenses routinely ranked at about 100. With Lane Kiffin, it's a different story. The photographic memory, it works well. They have an excellent symbiotic relationship. John David Baker, though, has a top 15 level national offense on his own. This is somebody that can function outside of the parameters of a Lane Kiffin offense and do it pretty well. So I'm very fired up about what could happen there. All right, so whenever you look at what's going on in our final segment, people love to talk about 4D chess. You remember that? Everybody talking about, oh, Lane's just playing 4D chess. This is starting to look exactly like 4D chess. And this is the only difference is it's Pete Golding playing it. You have a staff already in place while another group is being hired to recruit the portal and retain your roster behind the scenes. Hit the portal hard and use your collective guys who are already in the building. We'll talk about all of that next. Let's talk about something that most men don't bring up, but honestly, they absolutely should. Stress from work, money, and life doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is a next generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rougiette Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue and absorbs fast. You connect with a board-certified doctor online, and everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why over 15,000 or 150,000 men have already made the switch. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking that next step, now's the time. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. All right, going back to November. You remember November? It feels like it was 6 years ago at this point. But when going back to November, everybody was talking, no. Lane's just playing 4D chess. So he could raid the rosters of everybody else. That's what he's doing. He's just playing 4D chess. And it was silly because Lane, if you read on 3 today, there was Coach O interview on Bussin' with the Boys podcast where he talked about Lane called him last year and said he was getting a new job and would he be willing to come. And that lets you know that he blames 9-3 in 2024 on Ole Miss and not on the fact that he went for it at inopportune times in games that they would have won anyway if you'd have just kicked field goals. That's interesting, but I digress. I think Pete Golding is playing a little 4D chess right now. And this is what I mean by that. Pete Golding used the PR disaster that LSU and Lane Kiffin had over how poorly this had been handled for the last 6 weeks to ensure that the entire assistant coaching staff is returning, just as we heard, by the way, on the firing day and all of that. They were going to keep all the assistants. They were returning to coach the Ole Miss football team. And Pete, knowing what was going on, we were all talking about will Charlie Weis, won't Charlie Weis, all of that stuff. Well, Pete was actually looking for the offensive coordinator and got his number 1 top, fantastic home run choice in John David Baker. Now, John David Baker is going to have the opportunity while this coaching staff is working and game planning and trying to win a national championship. John David Baker and that staff is going to be able to work on retention, the transfer portal, and who they need to sign in February for roster building for 2026. It's literally a month carryover over the top where it's overlapping to where you get to decide these players performing well on your team potentially, so you need to go get them when you wouldn't normally have the time to do it because Ole Miss is in a playoff against Tulane and potentially Georgia and potentially Ohio State. John David Baker has the opportunity to retrofit this offense. We'll find out over the next couple of days, according to Walker Jones on the Rebel Yell hotline, if Trinidad Chambliss's waiver is approved. If that happens, obviously the Grove Collective goes all in to bring him in and save him that way. If not, you go all in on Austin Simmons and try and make that work. If not, you go out and find a quarterback, whether it's the Old Dominion guy or somebody like that. You have a chance, time to make a plan when you would otherwise not have it. Pete Golding balancing 2026 and what has to happen and what should be happening right now with the fact that you're playing in a playoff with a chance to win a national championship. He has managed to thread the needle of essentially having two staffs. And that is unbelievably cool for what can happen. I'm excited about John David Baker. I'm excited for what this offense could look like. I think that Ole Miss is going to run probably a little bit more gap stuff, a little bit more pin and pull stuff under John David Baker rather than what they do right now under Charlie Weis Jr. There are differences. The offenses are going to be different. Not much. The structure of it, the tempo of it is going to look a little bit the same, but they're going to use different personnel groupings. They're going to use different formations because the offensive coordinator is comfortable using them. Ole Miss is in a better position right now than it was 48 hours ago. And it was a better position 48 hours ago than it was the previous 48 hours. So it's improving each and every single day to the point where everybody needs to get excited because we are right on the precipice of the biggest sporting event in Mississippi history. And that going on with the transfer portal, getting an idea of what you should try to do, who you should try to pre-portal before it opens up on January 2nd. Kind of a pretty cool thing with what's going on. I'm excited about what could happen. And I'm excited to see exactly how all of this plays out. Now, we have Corey Burton going to come on our all access channel, the $15 a month tier of the Everydayers Club. He's got a video on there of Alexander and Willis and their touchdown catches in the Egg Bowl, like 10 minutes on each catch, by the way. He completely goes coach on that stuff. He's also working on a video on breaking down John David Baker's offense at East Carolina as we speak. I do not know when that will air, but that video is being created right now. So we'll see what that looks like when it's done. I'm pretty excited about what could happen. Thanks for tuning in today for Locked On Ole Miss. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little Tulane. We're going to have a Tulane guest talking about that game. And I'm not talking about Gary Smith. It's somebody else. Make sure you subscribe and follow the show so you'll get all the latest episodes. We are on all the social channels, so check that out as well. And did Locked On Ole Miss make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our National Locked On Podcast Network account on any social media platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be the first to join the Everydayers Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to members-only Discord channels. For those of you on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, we'll make sure to make your second listen Locked On Ole Miss football or Locked On college football. Hotty toddy, everybody. The biggest college football game in Mississippi history is just weeks away, and I'm pretty excited about it. All right, stick around. We'll see you tomorrow.